Hello and welcome to the GoodPractice Podcast, a weekly show about work, performance and learning. I'm Ross Garner and this is episode 107, To Coach or Not to Coach. I'm joined this week by regular podcast guest James McLuckie. Hello James.
Hi Ross.
And back from a lengthy sabbatical we have Gemma Towersey. Hello Gemma.
Hello Ross.
And our special guest this week is Coach at Large Jo Wainwright. Hello Jo.
Hello Ross.
So we were kind of banding around how we were going to approach this subject. I thought maybe what is coaching is kind of an obvious opening question, but I'm going to confess that I know almost nothing about coaching. So Jo, could you explain what coaching is?
Okay.
In less than 1 minute.
I'll try. It's hard to explain what coaching is because everyone's got a different experience or understanding, and a lot of people can market themselves and say that they're a coach and do something very different to somebody else who says they're a coach. So it's a way of being with someone, so one-to-one or in a group situation, where you would use language and communication techniques to enable good thinking and development and of the other person or of the other people that you're with, I would say.
So maybe the flip of that, what is coaching not, might be a good mirror to hold up to it.
Well, for me, coaching is not something you do to someone. It's something that you do with someone that enables and lifts and empowers that person within their own autonomy and thinking. Okay,
cool. So, I mean, I think we've got a diverse experience of coaching on the panel today, from myself, who has absolutely nothing. James has been coached, and Gemma is a coach as a side hustle. So I'm interested.
Side hustle?
Is that not a phrase that everyone uses?
I think when you're trying to be disparaging, you might use hustle, but...
I thought side hustle was like a common word. I didn't mean to be disparaging.
But wrong context, perhaps.
Yes, yeah.
It's not a dirty thing, is it?
No. It's can I make her sound more like a snake oil salesman type coach?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, exactly.
See, like,
I'm going
to
trick and manipulate you with this coaching.
Right, NLP.
I only found out what Netflix and chill means at the live podcast when I used that.
Did you?
I thought you spent like a night in. Yeah, I know.
Even I knew that, and I am just so ignorant of so many cultural things.
That must be awful embarrassing for you, Ross.
That's quite embarrassing. I feel quite embarrassed now. I'm going to have to go into Urban Dictionary for side hustle. But we have digressed massively. So, Gemma, tell us about your side hustle. What's your experience?
Well,
with
actually, I have been coached, and so I have both sides. So I was coached once when I was living in New Zealand by a Kiwi lady who was trained in America. So it was actually quite an interesting cultural kind of reflection there, because the coaching I received in New Zealand was 16 sessions, whereas so now I've been trained, and I've been trained on a sort of very purist coaching approach, and really, I mean, I give 6 sessions and really no more. So it was my time being coached in New Zealand was quite extended. And actually, I went travelling in the middle of it. So it took months to get through. But it was a very thorough experience. And it certainly, I guess proved, well, for me, the effectiveness of coaching, but also, kind of spurred me on to do my own qualification, and then I've been coaching various people on the side as my side hustle, and it's been really it's been a journey, and it definitely takes practice. Certainly it's a skill that needs to be honed, but I know we're going to talk about that later.
So why did you want to be coached in the first place?
It was a development opportunity that the company I was working for at the time offered me. And I chose to focus on building my confidence and, just generally getting rid of some stuff that I was holding on to that sort of held me back quite a lot. And the analogy that the whole process the 16 weeks took was, and it's very appropriate because this links very nicely to what I'm going to talk about later and what I learned this week, was clearing it's basically kind of the analogy of a garden. And so you go through phases of kind of clearing the weeds and looking at the excuses and all the kind of reasons that you tell yourself that you're doing certain things and things you can and cannot do. And so you spend a long time thinking about all those things and getting rid and clearing out old projects and shifting stuff, and then you can start planting new seeds, and then you kind of work towards your goal. So it was really good. It was really thorough, but I'm not sure that 16 weeks is necessary, or 16 sessions at least. But nevertheless, it was a really interesting experience, and does make me think about how culturally what we think about what we expect from coaches as well. Perhaps in America it's very different. Here it seems to be short and sweet, and over there it seems to be a fairly longer, more intense process.
Cool. James, you look like you were going to say something there.
I was just going to say that the most helpful description of coaching that I ever heard was that it's a conversation with direction. So not a directed conversation, but a conversation that's got some kind of purpose. Because I used to struggle with what coaching actually was until someone told me that. And the other bit of a kind of explanation that I heard about coaching was that a coach should recognise that the answer lies within the person, and that's where the direction, I guess, kind of comes from, or the purpose comes from, is helping the person the coachee to actually source that answer. But also at the same time recognising sometimes that coaching is appropriate, because if the answer isn't within that person, you do have to take more of a directive approach, or point someone in a different direction. So I found that possibly the most helpful, most straightforward definition of coaching. And obviously it's more complex than that, but in terms of a starting point to understand what coaching is and its value, I find that a really, really helpful way of describing it.
Yeah.
Jo, you're looking very thoughtful. I'm curious what you think of these responses.
I would say now my experiences of coaching are I really, really value spending time with other people that are coaches. And in terms of practice and keeping up my own coaching skills, the opportunity to do that with someone and switch roles, so be coach and be coachee, is wonderful and hugely valuable. And I think I've experienced lots of different types and styles and approaches to coaching, because I've ended up connecting with a lot of people who are coaches, and it never feels like a being done to, but it's okay to ask for someone to have a coaching conversation with you, or you're aware when it falls into that kind of dynamic, and it's lovely. And just to top on what James said about when you are with someone who genuinely believes that you can solve your own problems and that you can find the answers to the things that you are stuck with if you have the right conditions around you to do good thinking and exploration, is something quite magic, I think, when people can be like that with you and consistently be like that with you. Because you can't, even if you're doing your own thinking, you self-judge, or you're not as good at self-compassion as other people are at being compassionate about your thinking. So if it goes off all wonky or in the wrong direction, or you can't get to the answer quick enough, it's easy to kind of like self-berate and think, I'm never going to be able to get the answer, I'm not doing good thinking, or I'm going crazy. Whereas if someone's just with you, creating conditions that are more equal and freeing and open to that diversity of your thinking and encouraging you and giving you attention, it's quite, I find it hard to describe to people what coaching can do, and other than experience it, and then you'll really feel and know how it can be.
Oh, that was my next question. How awkward.
Sorry.
So James, why did you want to be coached?
I guess the main thing is I'd seen the positive impact of it on other people. And, as a learning and development person, I'd never been coached, and I was naturally quite curious about the process of it. And actually, as a process, I found it really, it was quite insightful, not just the actual experience of being coached, but even the before that. So thinking about what I wanted to get out of it. And one of the most interesting aspects of it was the actual picking of a coach. So I met with 3 coaches, or potential coaches, and I had a fairly fixed idea in my head who the winner, in inverted commas, was going to be. So I met with 3 people just to get a sense of them, and they all had different coaching styles and different backgrounds. And actually, the person who, if you told me up front, the person I would have said I would least likely select is the one I ended up going with, because the person that I thought I was going to pick, I think we'd have done really good work together. But when I met her, I could predict what her questions were going to be. There was a model that she worked to, and I thought to myself, you know what? The questions you're going to ask me, they'll elicit good responses and they'll be helpful responses, but I don't need to sit with you for 2-hour sessions to know the questions you're going to ask me. There's nothing you're going to ask me I think would be surprising. I think you challenge me in quite a directive way and you wouldn't put up with my nonsense. But by the same token, I don't think that I'd get anything different out of it than just going to the pub with you or something. So the person that I ended up going with, she was a Gestalt practitioner. And I thought to myself, you know, just the way you described what the sessions were going to be like, I don't know how these sessions are going to go. And that's what turned out to be the case, is they were genuinely surprising. They were genuinely uncomfortable. They were quite challenging, but in a healthy way. And I'm really glad that I kind of had that open mind to say, yeah, this is something new. This isn't going to look like how I think it's going to look like, but I want to try it. And actually, I always think back to that experience and go, yeah, I'm really pleased I had that openness to try something very different. And I guess if I was recommending to anyone that they were looking for a coach, you know, I would definitely take that approach, try some different, speak to a few people, and just because, you know, they're proposing sessions that don't look like the way you think they're going to look like, don't be afraid of that. That could potentially be a more purposeful and more positive experience.
It sounds quite uncomfortable, coaching. That's one of the things I always think about it takes a certain degree of bravery to put yourself in that position in the first place.
Well, do you know what? I had no idea I was as transparent as I was as well, because she was playing all these things back to me, and I was thinking, oh my God, I am so obvious. Here was me thinking I was this very multi-layered, complex person, and actually she saw right through me about loads of different things. And actually our sessions did kind of delve into counselling a bit. And, you know, to my coach's credit, you know, she didn't just she did flag that, and she said that we're in more of a counselling space now. Are you comfortable with this? And I said, yeah, that's fine. Let's go with it. But some of the references she was making back to my, you know, kind of things that have happened in my past and previous stuff, you know, again, they were all really helpful in terms of moving forward with the objectives that we'd come up with for the actual, you know, coaching section of the experience. So yeah, I mean, again, that all goes back to it not looking like what I expected it to look like. And, you know, and her flagging, we're moving into a different space. Are you okay with that? And me saying, yeah, I trust you. So let's go with it.
I think trust is such a massive part of it. You really, really have to trust the person that is coaching you.
Yeah.
And that trust can be broken instantly, but it sounds like she was a really good coach.
She was wonderful.
Warned you at every moment, you know, and even if you're not moving into a counselling space, you know, coaches should be able to raise your awareness to, you know, or to ask you if you want feedback, to ask you if you want some deeper input, or, yeah, there should always be these touch points.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. One of the quotes she said to me as well was, I'm going to move into a more directive space now. Are you okay with that? And I said, yep. And she says, you need to get over yourself, pal. I was like,
Nice.
But that happened probably about our fifth or sixth session. So we'd had that relationship where we could say these things to each other. So it wasn't like that was in the first session, but, you know, I think she'd realised occasionally she could be a bit more bold with me, because we'd had that rapport.
Sometimes that's what it needs.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Excellent.
What's the relationship between coaching and counselling?
Well, coaching looks forward and counselling looks back.
Oh. I would disagree, because my background is counselling, and that's usually the textbook answer that when we try and define the difference between coaching and counselling, and I don't think that's the case at all, because it depends which counselling approaches you use. So I became a person-centred counsellor a long time ago when I was still a student, and going on that journey and then eventually getting into managing people, and when you first team leading people and you end up going through one of the whichever psychometrics or quizzes are in the session that you're in, and it turns out you're a coaching manager, and I thought, that's interesting. And then the context of that is that I ended up in an organisation that provide drug and alcohol and mental health treatment. And if you're not clear what that is in the psychosocial sense, in the talking therapy sense, when you pull apart what that is and what you have to develop people's skills in, it's motivational interviewing, it's cognitive behavioural approaches, and it's solution-focused brief approaches. So I then became L&D manager for that organisation, so became the person that trained the people and then coached the coaches that coached the coaches, because that combination of those three psychosocial approaches used well, and even used individually, they're actually coaching approaches, not treatment, and not... So they were used in a therapeutic setting, and they were very much about moving forward and goal-orientated, more than I believe coaching needs to be. But they're very forward-focusing. And a bit like what you said earlier, Gemma, about things being brief and timed and measured and focused rather than a drawn-out long series, a drawn-out long intervention. It's the fact that you can be effective with a brief intervention. So I don't really know. I think the difference between... So it's hard to answer the difference between coaching and counselling, because I've had experiences similar to what James is describing when I've been coaching people, where I will say out loud, we're moving into a different context. We're moving into like a counselling approach now. Are you okay with that? Or do you want to go down there? Because that's where we're going and it feels natural to go there. So just to check that all of the time. And then
so how do you know that you're moving into that space? So would that help answer Ross's question? Like, what would give you a flag?
The personal account that's coming into the conversation, and the emotion that comes with that. Yeah. So it feels like we're doing something more therapeutic when there's a lot of emotion involved. And you can get emotion involved and feel really uncomfortable when it's coaching. But then I don't think that's counselling. I still think it's coaching. And then that's where the lines are really blurred, isn't it? And the ethics that you choose to follow as a coach are really important.
Yeah.
I think it's what's more important than defining it for me, because I actually don't think it matters. I actually did a whole modular piece of work on what's the difference between coaching and counselling, and does it matter? And I don't think it matters. I think I think what matters is the ethics around the coaching, the contracting, and the fact that you recontract when you need to. And if you are going to be the coach that takes somebody into that space or opens that space up, you need to have the skill to safely manage it and safely close that, so that that person leaves that conversation in a healthy way.
So that brings us on to one of my planned questions. I've thrown a curveball by not asking any of the planned questions so far, I don't think. But there is a tendency to urge managers to take on a coaching role with their teams. It does sound incredibly difficult for them to do that, and the people that they're coaching, the coachees, are incredibly vulnerable. And there might be a temptation to go down some sort of strange Frasier-esque I'm listening kind of route, where everything that you're doing is based on your sort of pop psychology understanding of what a counsellor does. So are there dangers involved in coaching, I guess, is my question.
I don't like when coaching is used as a punitive approach rather than a supportive developmental approach. So somebody gets some coaching when they've messed up or something's gone wrong, or doesn't seem very... It feels like it's this is going to put you right kind of thing. This is what you need to be better.
We're going to fix you.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I remember interviewing Julie Dryburgh, who regular podcast listeners will be fairly familiar with. And we were interviewing Julie about managers as coaches, or managers taking more of a coaching approach, and she was very clear that she didn't want managers to feel that they were now coaches and they were kind of wandering around organisations merrily coaching people and actually probably causing more harm than good. But I think from a basic perspective, for managers, opening their thinking to not always feel like they're the ones with the right answer, and actually sitting down with team members or colleagues and just prodding them in terms of, so what do you think we should do? Why did you make that decision? And just picking apart both positive and negative outcomes. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that, taking a coaching approach. I think where the danger comes is that managers think that they are coaches because they've been in a 2-day workshop, which is the experience I had when I did my coaching. When my coaching finished, my coach actually encouraged me. She said, your style of management is very coach oriented, so why don't you explore that a bit more? So I went on a 2-day coaching practitioner course, and at no point at all did I feel I'm a coach at the end of this, but other people who were there very much thought that, well, that's me now. I've done my coaching practitioner certificate for 2 days, and I got a nice bit of feedback from the little assessment at the end. That's me a coach now. And it's like, no, I really think you'll find that you're not. And it's going to take a bit more practice and skill than that. So I guess that's where the danger comes, is, people think they are coaches when, I'm sure someone like Jo has spent years honing her coaching craft. And I think that's where the danger is. But getting managers to think of a different approach and not just telling people things, but getting them to be more open, I think that's healthy to promote in organisations.
I agree. I actually think it's nigh on impossible to be a manager, a mentor, and a coach. There are 3 different things there. I think we could spend a whole day, couldn't we? We could spend a whole, again, master's module talking about the difference between a manager, a mentor, and a coach, and can one person be the one thing? And I know for a long time as a manager, I tried to be all 3 of those things. It's really hard.
Well, there's a power dynamic at play, isn't there? When you're the person's boss, that changes the relationship.
Well, that's an interesting insight into your mind, Ross, speaking as your manager.
Yeah, I know. I was listening to you saying you did a coaching style. I was like, what is he talking about?
Well, I implement it when it's appropriate, Ross. So
some people need the rod.
There is an implicit power structure even in coach and coachee, and I believe it's the coach's responsibility to do something with that. Yeah. Because you have to bring the conditions for the coachee, because there is a power there. You have got the power whether you want to or not. I don't know. Have any of you heard of David Megginson?
Nope.
He is used to be, and he is in residence, so he's retired but still works within Sheffield Hallam and Sheffield Hallam Business School, and he was one of the founders of the European Council for Coaching and Mentoring. And one of my most favourite learning days that I've ever been on, that I found a few years ago, are the coaching and mentoring days. What are they called? Coaching and mentoring research days, I think, at Sheffield Hallam Business School. And they are for people who are doing postgraduate study, or they're qualified postgraduate masters coaching. And it's open space. It's purely open space. And being real eager beaver, I turned up really early, didn't know if I was able to find my way, found the room and got up there and walked in, and I didn't know who was going to be hosting this. Bearing in mind it's open space. I walk in and David Megginson is there. So I've read a lot of his stuff, think he's wonderful, never met the guy, and I walk in and I'm just like, meeting this guy, and he did not allow an ounce of my looking up at him at all. He brought equality and mutuality straight away. He asked my name. He was actually interested in how my morning had gone up to that point. And he didn't forget my name all day.
Oh, wow.
And I just think that he personifies what coaching is, I would say. He walks and talks it. It's the way he is as a person. which is underpinned by a lot of practice and I imagine a lot of practice and techniques. But it's a bit like what James said about the 2-day coaching course. It's the same for yoga, isn't it? Because you can go and do you can go and do a weekend yoga course and then do yoga classes, and you can do a weekend coaching course and sell your services as a coach, or you can see coaching as a whole philosophy, a whole way of being, a whole belief system, if you like. So there really is a spectrum of where it comes from and how it's done.
That he sounds like he was just naturally very interested in people, and that just kind of bled through his practice, basically.
Yeah. It was just that he did have a lot of power in that room. He's well published, well known stuff, and he didn't allow an ounce of it. Whereas I would have happily sat there just going, "Oh my God, you're amazing!" like all day long.
We are not worthy.
Because it was open space, we actually had sessions together where I felt confident. It's the first one I'd been to. I felt confident contributing, and I was a student at the time, and like I'd got something of value to say. I felt comfortable speaking out loud and contributing or challenging something that he might have said. And not worrying that it might be pointless or, not very intelligent.
Oh, lovely. I think we will revisit coaching at another time, because I think that there's more to get into, but we are out of time. So I think we'll move on to a regular feature of What I Learned This Week, where we each reveal something we picked up over the past 7 days. James, would you like to go first?
Well, genuinely, the only thing I've really learned, it's been such a dominant thing in my life for the last 2 months, is the impact on renovating your house on the rest of your life. And this week's installment is about painting and decorating. So, everyone else has been at the weekend was enjoying lovely trips to the park and sitting outside in their gardens because it was beautiful weather, and myself and my other half were up and down ladders, out buying paint, etc., etc. So it's, I think the thing I've learned the most is whatever impact you think renovation is going to have on your life and your house, just quadruple that. So for example, last weekend, my other half was away down to Birmingham to visit his parents, and I love having an empty house. I had all these Netflix things planned, and I thought, you know what, I just can't sit in this house anymore. So I spent 4 hours with a toothbrush cleaning bathroom grout, rather than sitting catching up on American Horror Story as I had planned. And then this weekend we learned that Faro and ball paint, while lovely and expensive, is an absolute bugger to put on the wall. It's worth it when it's on it, but holy Christ, trying to put it on is whatever painting technique we had honed over the years was completely destroyed by this stuff. So yeah, I am sat here a broken DIY man, but the end is in sight. So.
Jo, do you want to go next?
That was almost my own little counselling session there to myself.
I know.
Yeah.
I was going to make a comment, but then I was like, I think he's probably best left alone.
You can cut it. You can cut it. It's fine.
Jo, what have you learned?
I've shared this on social media as my greatest achievement so far this year, and there's a cherry tree that hangs just outside our fence, and I've been watching these cherries for a few weeks, and they're really, really, really high up, impossible to get when it felt that way. So I learned that, I managed to. Me and my mum fashioned a cherry picker device from a child's bow for an archery, like a toy archery set, and the broom. We fashioned a cherry picking device, and I got myself as high as possible, hanging over the fence, and managed to pick a load of cherries from this tree. So I was just delighted, and I just learned, if I give myself a bit of time and just keep thinking, eventually I can semi-succeed at things.
You're all very industrious. Yeah.
I get extra proud when I've achieved a practical thing.
I never have, so that's why I haven't experienced that.
I hope you like cherries, Jo, after all that, picking all those cherries. I don't like them very much.
That was the motivation. They're gorgeous. Yeah.
Okay.
And Gemma, what have you learned?
Oh, well, yes, again, it does relate to the garden. And I think actually our cherry trees are on the way out. I think they're in senescence. But no, this week I learned.
I'm sorry. Stop. Senescence.
That's the death. That's the death of a plant or a tree, and it goes through. That's the period, and it still produces branches and leaves and stuff. But it's the period of death. It's quite sad.
That's fantastic. What a lovely word, though.
That's something I've learned this week. Then that's my learned this week. Yeah.
Casually drop that in conversation.
Oh, senescence. Yes. Yeah. Get me what I like.
I've been reading lots of horticulture books. And then this weekend I learned how to deadhead a rose because, I have an enormous rose plant, and apparently you have to deadhead to make sure it doesn't go or get in a disease, or you kind of keep it alive for as long as possible. So yes, I was deadheading, and I cooked my own beetroot, my own potatoes, and my own kale this weekend too.
Oh, lovely.
Yes, it's all about the picking and the storing and the cooking and the eating.
And did they taste better being yours?
Oh, yeah. Oh, the work. Oh, the sweat and the money that's gone into that allotment and the number of hours watering. So yes, it's all worthwhile now. Now everything is growing and ready.
Oh, you're all talking about growth and improvement. I've got something utterly frivolous. I was listening to the West Wing Weekly podcast, as I have been for a few months now, and we were discussing the New York Times advice for submitting wedding photos. And I just saw that this was something that had never occurred to me, but it makes total sense once you actually hear the advice that they give. So the most important part of advice for the happy couple is that when submitting a photo to the New York Times, they should arrange themselves with their eyebrows on the same level and with their heads fairly close together. And that's because if you have a really tall person and a really short person, then that doubles the column inches that it takes up, and it will not be accepted because they can send in as many photos as they possibly can.
Oh my goodness, that would not work for someone like me and Chris. Where there's like a foot between us.
Or me and my Chris, yeah.
Or you and your Chris.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
I'm not conforming. I don't want my picture in there.
No. I'm rebelling against the sizist nature of that requirement.
I just like that you would automatically just take a photo and send it in and not give it a second thought. It'd be a nice photo, but you wouldn't think about column inches and whether you'd get accepted.
Yeah.
It kind of takes all the romance out of it,
ruins
doesn't
it. It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Sorry, darling, our eyebrows are not aligned, and then you're... Where does it end? Do you both go to the beauty shop together and get them kind of, shaped so they're the same? And they line up
dye, so
perfectly?
it looks like...
Yeah.
Nice sharp line.
Where will this madness ever end? I don't know.
If you'd like to get in touch with us about anything we've said on the show, you can tweet me at RossGarnerGP. You can tweet James
at James McCluckey.
You can tweet Gemma
at Gemma Towsey.
And you can tweet Jo
at Jo_coaches.
You can also tweet at GoodPractice at GoodPracticeAUS, or you can visit goodpractice.com. Jo, do you want to plug anything?
No, I didn't know I was planning to. I've got nothing to plug.
Most people come on with rakes of stuff to plug.
Except to explore coaching. Just explore it. Have a read. Have a listen. Have a look. And the thinking environment is what I'm doing at the moment. I'm doing more training in that, and it's you can pick up the time to think book, I think, and practice and play with it without doing anything wrong, like we were discussing earlier.
Great. Well, I'll put some links in the show notes to various bits and pieces for anyone that's interested in that. Thanks very much, everyone.